Hi everyone, welcome back to My Parenting Way. My name's Katie and today I'm going to give you a little video on how the second child is much more difficult than the first. So in making this video, I tried to do a bit of research about having a second child and how the second child can be compared to the first. And I actually found very little information. But then the more I asked around, I realised how everyone just says how much the second child is just the batshit crazy one, and I felt like I needed to delve into this a little bit deeper. So today I'm asking the question, is the second child more challenging in all scenarios, and if so, why? So just to let you know, there's absolutely no science behind any of this. I just thought I'd make a little tongue-in-cheek video just to break down some of the reasons why our second children are like this, just to help us mums feel a little bit better about ourselves and what we're going through, because as the greys are getting greyer and the wrinkles are getting deeper, sometimes we just need to watch videos like this to help us feel a bit better about ourselves. So just a little bit of context about this video. Aiden, my son, is now 18 months old and my daughter has just turned 5, and Aiden is literally running circles around me. Just yesterday, for example, he broke 3 of Emily's toys within 15 minutes, and he probably would have broken a 4th, but I had to remove him from the room and gave him a balloon to play with, which I think he popped in about 30 seconds of having it. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that going from 1 to 2 children is harder. Going from 0 to 1 is considerably harder, and I feel like that's a whole different video I need to explore. 1 to 2 is easier as far as having children is concerned. All I'm saying is that the second child is harder work. And so why is this? I am briefly going to explain why I think this might be. Number 1, and this is an obvious one, you get less one-to-one time and space with your second child. So your second child comes into this world already having a sibling to have to battle with, either physically or mentally or emotionally, for your mum's time. And obviously not having that one-to-one time means that sometimes there is less of a bond established quickly, whereas normally if it's your first, you would have that time and energy, and you know, when they slept, you slept, and when you had that time with them, you had more energy to do so. With your second, you do not have that, and I think actually that is one of the main reasons why they end up going a little bit crazy when you have the second one. Number 2, and this is a bit of a strange one, but I think what can happen is that as your eldest is a little bit more developed, both, as I said, physically, emotionally, you can end up comparing them to your first. So what I do is I end up looking at Emily, who's now 5. She can read to a certain amount, she can write to a certain amount, she can dress herself, she can do her own teeth, you know, there's so many things that she can do by herself because she's independent and older. And I end up looking at Aiden, who is obviously younger, he's not able to do any of these things yet, which is obvious. But it's difficult to then not look at your youngest and be like, why can't you do any of that? And you end up looking at your youngest child as the one who seems less capable. And as I said, it seems obvious, and it is obvious, of course it is, but then you end up putting a lot of emphasis on the eldest to do a lot more, and I think this bridges even more of a gap between the two. So then the second one seems even less capable, and you put a lot of ownership and almost pressure on the first. So I think this sort of comparison thing that you have going on, which I think is quite normal and natural with parents of sort of more than one, I think that can add to it as well. Number 3, and again, a bit of an obvious, but a big one, the second child copies everything the first does. So Emily will climb up the stairs in no time. She will just run up and scamper along and do whatever it is she needs to do. Aiden looks at her and thinks, I can do that. and off he'll go. Now, this is fine as long as you're there and you are helping said tiny toddler compared to child, but then there'll be those times where you think they're in the next room and it turns out the eldest has opened the door and decided to run off, and the second one will do so after him or her, and you are none the wiser, and it's not until you hear a bash or a tumble or a scream that you realise that the second one has tried to do something the eldest has done first and failed. Number 4, there is no time for gentle parenting. Now, I went into this whole parenting malarkey thinking that I would happily be that sort of earth mother, wanting to do gentle parenting and co-sleep with my child and, you know, do like soft, quiet talking and explaining our feelings. And with the second child, there is none of that. With Aiden, bless him, even when he was poorly, he was in his own bed faster than, you could say, you have chicken pox. This was a natural need to protect myself, as selfish as it sounds, but I now have 2 children I've got to keep alive and look after, and somehow at some point be able to feed myself and wash myself and go to the toilet occasionally. So sometimes gentle parenting isn't even an option. It becomes yelly, screaming, crying in the corner, parenting. None of this gentle parenting malark. No. And when that happens, I think your second child does get the worst version of mummy. Number 5, when the second child hurts themselves, you're a bit more blasé. So I can name countless times that I have somehow accidentally hurt Emily, or she's fallen over or whacked herself, and I've rushed over and been the sort of concerned, mollycoddling parent that gives all the kisses and all the hugs, and sometimes lets out a little tear of my own if I'm feeling really sort of upset about how upset they're being. With the second, Aiden is lucky if he gets sort of a brush down and then off you go, bye, carry on, keep playing, up you get, go. With this, I think the second child can get a natural resilience. So every time they bash themselves, walk off something, fall off something, or climb something, I think they just think, well, I'm not going to get any sympathy anyway, so I might as well just do it. Number 6. So although you kind of know what you're doing second time round, so you actually know what this parenting malarkey is kind of about, by the second time, you find yourself not being able to physically stretch yourself into 2. So with 2, they can have different nap schedules, they can sleep differently at night, they have different food preferences, even as something as simple as going to a park and they go in opposite directions. You end up not physically being able to give them both your time, which means what happens is that the second one just has to naturally defend for themselves a lot more than the first one did. It also means that you end up being a little bit more stressed out than usual. So the second child gets a more stressed out version of mum than the first one ever did. And I think those parenting vibes end up being picked up quite heavily in the second one. And finally, number 7, the different personalities in your children will be a shock. And don't you sometimes realize that you have to relearn how to parent with your second child? So what happens is that you'll think you'll go in and have a second child and you'll do all the stuff the same. It's not. Quite often you'll find yourself having to relearn the whole thing, which means that your second child has to get the relearning version of you, especially when you feel like you've got to undo all your previous learning from your first one because they're completely different personalities. So there you go. Those are my 7 reasons why I think the second child is a little bit crazier and a little bit more difficult than the first. I hope you found this useful in some way. I hope you just found it funny and a good thing to watch to just make you feel better about your own parenting, especially if you've got a crazy second one like me. And hit the like if you've enjoyed this video. Hit the subscribe if you'd like to get all our family updates, and I will see you soon. Bye.